Hi, and welcome to Food for Thought, a podcast gab fest where a multiracial mix of queer writers gather around the table to talk about sex,
identity.
That's where you go, culture, what we like to read, and who we like to read. Food for Thought, still drunk on rosé and high on poppers here at the end of the world. For as long as poppers still exist. I'm Joseph Osmundson, scientist, writer, and true to form, I recently found out that my body tries to kill itself 400 times a night, and I now have a CPAP machine. Sleep apnea, girlies, where are you? Yeah, Morgan?
Hi, I'm Morgan Jerkins. I'm substituting for the illustrious Tommy Pico. I am an author, journalist, occasional professor and editor. I am not queer, although I'm excited to be present. And I'm still learning the depths of what a popper can do. No pun intended.
Also, thank you so much for stepping in. Hi, everyone. I am Denne Michele Norris. What a moment. And I'm a reader. I'm a former figure skater. True. And bitch, I'm an author.
Yeah!
Finish your novel,
Can we talk about it?
All right, on tonight's extra special live edition of Food for Thought, we get started by oversharing. Then Denne reaps her harvest. I hope it's the scene involving gray sweatpants and a big Italian sausage. And we, as always, end with one tiny, delectable bite. Let's get it going. All right, I'm feeling a little peckish. So let's start the top of the show the way any good top should, with a little tease, a little something to whet your palates, our amuse-bouche. Tonight, we're going to amuse your bouche with Did They Say That? In this game, we let you. So, Denne, Morgan, and I have a group chat. That is just facts, and we talk about everything. And so, in this game, I'm going to read off a topic, and you, our illustrious audience, is going to guess if that topic has been breached in our group chat or not. And then we will tell the truth. Okay, are you ready? Does everyone understand the game? Okay. Right. Topic number 1. Andrea Longchew's critical takedowns. Have we talked about it in the group chat or not? Yes. Everyone's terrified.
Hell, I'm terrified. But yes, we talk about it. We go there.
Bad art friend.
We talked about that? How long has the group chat been around? I'm like,
since
longer than that.
We have, right? The amazing search function on iMessages has been used by me in the last 24 hours. We did talk about bad art friends.
I remember texting y'all being like, 2 weeks ago, Sonia Larson emailed me inviting me to do something at Grub Street.
Okay.
So now I know who she is.
Yes, I remember that.
Denne, you know this is being recorded, right?
It's all public record.
Oh, okay.
Y'all know.
Okay. Next up, Denne's daddy issues. Have we talked about? Oh yeah. Okay.
I mean, I'm seeing a lot of faces in this audience, and I've talked about my daddy issues with pretty much all of them.
You wrote a book about it,
and then I wrote a book about it, which I've conned all of you into buying. So,
next up, bowel movements. Have we talked about it in the group chat? There's a child here. There is a child. I'm changing everything that's on this piece of paper. Denne, you cannot read the opening scene of the book.
No. I feel like if you have a scientist in the group chat, you got to talk about that.
Okay. Bowel movements. Have we talked about it?
If the group chat was just me and Morgan, I'm not sure we would talk about bowel movements.
We're too bougie for that.
We could, yeah. We're both the people who are like, we want people to believe that we don't have them, I would say. We're
talking about your Prada bag.
Right,
where you going
I
with
just
your
sit there.
book advance money.
Yes.
Denne and I have shared a bathroom on tour, so she knows.
And somehow I'm still alive to tell the tale.
Edibles for sleep versus edibles for sex. Oh yeah, we've talked about it. Yeah.
Absolutely.
About how all D&D live play groups are really just polycules.
Dungeons and Dragons? No?
Oh yeah, we've talked about that.
100%.
That is not calling out a friend who can't be here tonight because of his D&D group. That is.
I'm sorry. I just feel like even still, like if someone says they like Dungeons and Dragons, they're not. I don't think they're monogamous.
They're
Like,
definitely.
They're
Like,
not.
I'm like,
They're
mm.
not. Not these days.
oh.
Okay, what about worst grinder stories? Best grinder stories.
Do we have
White
best-
Lotus season 3. Whether Eric and Don Jr. have a White Lotus season 3 brothers vibe? No, you fucking sickos! That's disgusting.
That we haven't done. We've come close, but
No, I won't even go near that.
I want to leave.
no.
Have we talked about when the direct deposit hits? Yes.
Listen, there is nothing sexier than the direct deposit. Okay?
Nothing.
It
Well-
just shows up inside, and you're like, I'm ready to go.
Speaking
In
of
more ways than one.
there's nothing sexier and it just shows up inside, whether you're ready for it or not, the next thing literally on the list is baby arm dick. Have we talked about it in the group chat? Oh yeah.
I don't remember that. Maybe I blocked it out.
Maybe.
I think that was the effect
We
of the
have.
poppers and the baby arm dick.
Yes. Because they go together.
Okay.
You know.
Okay, we're
Together.
done with the game. Thank you so much for playing.
Thank you all for playing.
So now we're going to segue into something a little less irreverent, and Den is going to read from her novel.
I think all you need to know is that the novel begins on Davis and Everett's wedding day. And Davis is just waking up. 3. Between the comforter and Everett's body wrapped around his, Davis is plenty warm. He pushes himself up, watching Everett's arm fall from around him. He shifts from his side, rises, and tiptoes to the window. He looks out at the water. The house is well insulated, but if he tilts his chin and turns his head just so, he can hear the ocean, waves crashing up, washing down, the tide lingering at its crest before rolling lazily back. The world, still dark, still quiet, belongs to him and all the feelings he carries into their wedding day. Davis moves through the master suite, opening the door to the hallway, where despite his best effort, he wakes Bam Bam, Everett's golden retriever, who follows him to the kitchen. He opens the freezer, pulls out a stainless steel tumbler and fills it with ice, then water. Standing by the counter, he starts chugging. He is overwhelmed by his joy, his body shaky, his breath shallow and quick. But there's something about drinking an excruciatingly cold glass of water that fortifies Davis. It seems to bring him back to earth. He can't believe this day is here. He grips the edge of the counter, tries to flatten the soles of his feet against the floor, anything to keep his body in the moment, which he suspects will help tether his mind. Davis is wildly, indescribably, incandescently in love. Certainly, Everett is the kind of man Davis dreamed of, charming, successful, and passionate amid any number of additional easy-to-spot qualities. But those traits, Davis thinks, are not the reason for the love. Davis loves Everett because he knows Everett. Everett is a knowable man, perhaps the first he's encountered. Everett is the exact opposite of the Reverend, and the most vital thing Davis knows about Everett is his innate goodness. It felt like a dream come true when Everett's parents offered the Montauk House as a wedding venue. Davis knows the Caldwells are fond of him, but despite Everett's insistence that they love him, Davis has never quite believed it. Getting married in their beachside Hamptons house, a home filled with decades of memories, is a welcome that Davis never expected and can never repay. All he can think as he looks around the kitchen, as he peers through the sliding glass doors toward the beach, as he refills the tumbler with water, is that now he is part of this family. He gets to make memories here too. "Come on, boy," Davis says, gesturing for Bam Bam to follow him back upstairs. He's so excited he can't sleep, but what he can do is run scales and arpeggios while he has some time before Everett wakes up. He runs them every day, and even though he'd promised Everett he wouldn't practice the viola this week, he's done them every morning. When they arrived, he commandeered one of the smaller guest bedrooms so he could slip away unnoticed for short bouts of practice. When he opens the door, he pauses as Bam Bam looks between him and the master suite. Davis smiles, bends down, pets Bam Bam, and gestures for the dog to follow him inside. But Bam Bam trots back to his post at the door to the master suite, plops down, and wags his tail before closing his eyes. Smart. You've got a big day ahead of you, he says to Bam Bam, winking, before he quietly shuts the door. He opens the case, pulls out the viola, and places his ebony practice mute on the bridge. After he tunes, he begins with open strings, taking the opportunity to feel the knuckles on his right, his bowing hand, contract and extend. There's tension in his shoulders, so he breathes deep, letting them sit where they fall naturally. He pulls the bow along the C string, fully extending his arm until the bow comes to a stop at the tip. He brings the bow back to the frog, and then he repeats the same 2 long strokes on the other strings. Although the volume is muted, there's still richness, fullness in the tone. Next is a round of 3-octave major and minor scales to get his left hand warmed up. Davis was trained in the Galamian method. The beginning of each scale has an extra turn for intonation and finger precision. With each scale, he uses a different bow stroke, tries a new rhythm, from legato to staccato, from quarter notes to triplets. For Davis, scales and arpeggios are like daily meditation. He can quiet his mind, turn his attention to observing, which is different from thinking. The stillness of his body, contrasted with the quick dexterity of his fingers, has a way of calming him, bringing steadiness. Davis had tried explaining this on their second date. Everett, who'd worn a deep blue button-down tucked neatly into gray flat-front slacks, had laughed at the thought of playing scales every day. Don't you get bored of them? A question that normally might have hurt or offended Davis instead amused him. He doesn't know the way his eyes glinted, having caught an errant ray from the restaurant's lighting. He doesn't know how his sudden smile, joyful yet slightly condescending, managed to capture the most tender sort of happiness that Everett had ever seen. What Davis does know, what he remembers, is how quickly he shook his head, how he leaned forward and really looked Everett in the eye. His boldness in that moment still delights him. He almost knocked his fork to the ground as he tried to explain the joy of scales, the beauty in setting aside time every day to go back to the beginning, to lose yourself in rote practice. Think of it like this. On a playground, you've got your slide, your tire swing, your seesaw, your jungle gym. They're bolted to the ground. They never move. One day, I slide down the slide, then I run over to the tire swing, sit on top of it, and swing around in big, lopsided circles. Then I climb into the jungle gym where I crawl through the yellow plastic tube, but not the red plastic tube with the right angle because I want to climb down the mini ropes course, and the red tube doesn't lead to that. Then I'll run over to the seesaw and ride that with my friend. The next day, I'll start with the tire swing, but I'll turn it sideways so I can slide my legs through the hole in the middle and spin round and round like a top, rather than sitting on top of it, swinging in lopsided circles. And then I'll go to the seesaw, but this time I'll sit on the other side so I can face the street instead of the school parking lot. I'll chase my friend up the giant slide because I'm not feeling gravity that day. And when I end at the jungle gym, I'll climb up the ropes course and walk the plank backward until I end up in the pirates' quarters. That's where I can steer the ship and look out over the rest of the playground. Do you see what I'm getting at? Before Everett could respond, Davis kept going. Every day, I have to play on that playground because that's the only playground my school has. That's the equipment. That's what I've got. But am I running around solo, or is it a giant game of TV tag? Am I running up the slide or sliding down it? Everything about how I use the playground is completely up to me. Nobody gets to tell me what to do. In the constraints, in the limitations of the playground, I find my freedom. Scales and arpeggios are the same way. I know the notes, and they never change. So I have to get creative. Do I slur my F minor 3-octave scale in triplets going up and staccato and square eighth notes going down? Am I solo pianissimo in my A minor arpeggio today, or am I mezzo forte? Do I spiccato the bow on G major because it's a joyful key, and then go legato and molto adagio in F minor because it's dramatic and I'm playing Brahms in a recital that night? Davis sits back then, noticing that Everett's eyes had never strayed from his. It's very different from when I'm learning a piece, Everett. Scales and arpeggios, that's the playground. That's where I get to run and play and jump and be free. Wow, Everett said. You really took that metaphor and ran with it. Davis smiled and shrugged, suddenly bashful. Did I? Everett narrowed his eyes, but he smiled too as he did it. You've said all that before. Davis laughed. Swear to God, I came up with it on the spot. Davis watched Everett watching him as he crossed his legs, sat back, and brought his martini to his lips. They nearly closed the restaurant, and when the check came and Davis reached for it and Everett reached faster, Davis said, But I asked you out. And Everett, with his big green eyes, glanced up as he pulled a credit card from his wallet and said nothing. When Davis started to pull his own credit card from his satchel, Everett, still staring, the movement barely perceptible, shook his head. Davis felt compelled to set the satchel down, and when he did, Everett smiled. Only then did Davis glance at his dessert plate, which still held a few bites of cinnamon apple pie. I don't even like pie, but this is so, so good. He sliced himself a small bite, speared it with his fork, and ate it. Then he looked at Everett again. You seem like a man of few words. He sliced another bite. Why do you say that? There was something mysterious in Everett's voice. You've been so quiet tonight. The waiter came and silently collected the check and the credit card. All the while, Everett's gaze went uninterrupted. That's more about you than it is about me. Are you saying I talk too much? Davis narrowed his eyes. Everett grinned. No, not at all. When Davis said nothing, Everett continued. I like how much you talk. I like your voice. He tilted his head to the side. So, I listen. But I promise I'm not, he made air quotes, a man of few words. He blinked. I'm just a man. And then, after another few moments of silence, why, what are you thinking about? Huh. Davis closed his eyes and bit his lip. I was just... He paused, pensive. I don't know what that feels like. What feels like? The waiter returned, handing Everett the receipt and his credit card, smiling at them both, thanking one, then the other. Through all of this, Everett never moved his gaze from Davis. Davis leaned in close as Everett picked up the pen. To be like, I'm just a man. What does that feel like? Everett shrugged and furrowed his brow. He glanced down to sign the check. It doesn't feel like anything, really. It's just... I don't know, it just is.
Den is the ultimate literary citizen. We have been friends. We've been friends for several years, and in that time, Den has lived multiple lives. She's already said former figure skater, Harlem community shepherd, lit review editor, now editor-in-chief of Electric Literature. And in that time, you have traversed so many spaces. You have poured your all into the prose of other people. You have gathered a lot of gossip in the interim. And so I have a question of how did you land on this story? Since I know you have so much in you. No pun intended. Don't see, that's like no.
You are a natural for food for thought. First, thank you for that. It's interesting because this novel took many years, 14 years to be exact. I started it in the summer of 2011, and so in many ways, this novel predates sort of my literary citizenship. But what's interesting is that when you work on one novel for that long, and you're as young as I was when I started it, I was 25, it necessarily has to grow up alongside you. Mm-hmm. There are so many experiences that I didn't have at 25 that I wanted to write into the novel that I was like guessing at and thinking about and just sort of sketching out in my writing. I had barely ever paid a bill at that point, like a real bill other than rent. Mm-hmm. I was learning how to, navigate living in New York City, getting around, setting up utilities when you moved, dealing with just like the challenges of being a young broke person in New York trying to do something creative. I had not had sex yet when I started this novel, actually. And I knew that sex was at the core of the novel. Mm-hmm, yeah. So there was just a lot that I had to kind of navigate to get there. And so in the process of like trying to be a writer and trying to figure out writing, working in Harlem, I lived in Harlem. I had to have a job. I had to figure out as many people do, writing alongside having a full-time job. In terms of the literary exploits that I was in during those years, when I first started writing, I didn't know if I would be published. I didn't know if I had the talent that I thought it took, if I had the wherewithal to do the work to write and rewrite and rewrite and rewrite and revise for all the years that it often takes to be published. And I spent the first few years, I would just write a short story, finish it. I would usually get pretty good feedback in my MFA program, and I'd write another story. And I just kind of did that. And I knew I wasn't writing anything that was worthy of publication. I knew that the work wasn't strong enough, but I did not have the energy to go back to that work and keep working on it and excavating it and figuring out how to try and make it excellent. And so I worried really up until through the first year of my MFA if I really had what it took, not so much by that point on the talent level, because I was getting a lot of positive affirmation, but if I could do the work. And so I wanted to just be in the world of books and the world of literary work and the world of storytellers in any way that I could. And so, yes, when I started editing at literary journals, I did it sort of selfishly because everyone said that if you did that editorial work, it made you a better writer. And that is true. That's certainly true in my experience. But I also was like, I may not be published. This book may not make it into the world. I want to be here in whatever way I can be here. I want to be around these people. I want to be around this work. And I'm happy to do it in a way where I'm teaching people. I'm happy to do it as an editor. I, hadn't ever thought of agenting, but I would have been very open to that too. I just wanted to be in this world as much as I could.
The novel is a product of very deep, deep fermentation. Lots of flavor.
Flavor.
Funky, acidic. I'm thinking fermentation, people. On a serious note, echoing, Morgan, have you been edited by Den?
I think I have.
I have too.
I'm trying to think about when did I first meet Den? And it was so early on, but I remember Den being this person that I never knew you had those fears. I just always thought of you being so patient with other writers and with yourself that when you told us you got the book deal, it just felt like a natural ascendance in a sense. It just felt like, okay, this is what's going to happen. And it just needed time to grow. And I never got that. I never knew you had that fear. You were just like, I'm working, I'm cooking. I'll go back. I'll figure it out.
The number one key to life in New York, fake it till you make it. Right?
Well, you faked it well there because I couldn't tell at all.
It's literally been for anyone who's actually a Food for Thought listener, it was a refrain on our entire show from the beginning. Finish your novel, Den.
Oh, I didn't.
Finish your novel. It was it predated the show. It was all through the show. And so that's kind of why we wanted to do a Food for Thought for release here, because it's fruition. It's the orgasm that we've been edging toward.
Also, no joke, it has shown up on Goodreads. I broke down and checked and looked at some Goodreads reviews last week.
Don't look at your Goodreads.
And there was
What'd you do?
I broke down and finally looked at Goodreads.
No.
I did. And there was one Food for Thought listener who wrote about how it had been a punchline in the show, finish your novel. And the person gave it 5 stars and was like, it was well worth the wait. It was amazing. It was amazing. Goodreads is back to being banned.
Goodreads is banned
from all my devices.
I made the edging income joke because I want to piggyback my next question is on something you said, that you recognized even before you ever had sex yourself that sex was a really important thing about this novel. And my question was about sort of how that came to you even at that time, because as I read the novel, sex, first of all, opens the novel. There's a very important sex scene at a transition point in the novel toward the end. And I think most importantly, at least to me as a reader, sex was something that told the main character that something was wrong when he was deeply invested. And I was going to say pretending, but I don't even know that it's pretending. Sex was like a beacon that told this person that something was not all the way right. So what was it about that aspect of our collective humanity that was so important to you and that you knew, because I feel like so much has changed as you've changed and the book has changed, but that hasn't. So what was it about sex as a storytelling device, even in our lives, not in literature?
I mean, I think the great thing about writing about sex is that it is something that we all think about in whatever ways we're thinking about. It's something that we're all dealing with, whether we're having it or not, whether we want to be having it or not, all of the different things. It's such a huge part of life. And I remember when I was an English major in college and I did junior seminar, which was the big thing that every English major did at Haverford College. And there was no joke. And, our parents were paying $45,000 a year for this. I think about this now, but there was a day in class where we spent the session coming up with language and things for that represented orgasm and the ways in which orgasm showed up in literature and the different languages, the different words that were used in literature and music and all kinds of things. And this is when we were reading. Oh my God, what's the big one that everyone reads? I feel like everyone reads in college. Stream of consciousness.
The big one that everyone
Ulysses.
reads.
Thank you. Oh my God, that's
that
where
qualifies.
I am. Ulysses. That Ulysses. Where
that qualifies.
This was in response to that. Anyway, the point is that this novel started from a different project, and it didn't start as a novel. I was thinking of it as only a short story. I did not think I had what it took to write a novel. This was the summer between my 2 years and my MFA, and my first year had gone, I guess, well as a student, but it was really difficult for me personally. My father died a month into the program, which it was sudden, it was traumatic, and there were conversations that I had put off having that we needed to have. And so I was dealing with that, and I was sort of writing in this haze for the first year, and I was writing these stories that people said were good, but again, I had no interest in working on. And I knew this was a problem, and so over the summer, I challenged myself to try and write something that was pretty close to my lived experience, because I felt like if I could take away any energy devoted to convincing a reader of something's truthfulness, because I knew it was true, then I could focus everything on the emotional impact of the work, the heart of it. And this was just an experiment. And when I look back on it and think about what the setup was, it was not that close to my lived experience, actually. But for some reason, I thought it was. I don't know. But the point is, I thought of this, and I was sort of experiencing this to an extent, in grieving my father. My father was a minister. I grew up in church. I was attending weddings and funerals all the time from a very young age. And so from a very young age, I was conscious of the idea of death and of people who knew me being in heaven, which is what, they tell you as a young Christian kid is where people end up. And so any adult that I was fond of from church, my grandparents, as I was growing up, I would think of them in heaven, and I would wonder what about me they knew now because they were in heaven, and what they understood that they hadn't understood in life. And this was not a question I ever answered. It just was always on my mind. It literally kept me up at night as a young person. And so that's what I was sort of getting at. That was the early impetus for this novel, is that this character who's so far away from the church and so far removed from his biological family is suddenly thrown into this emotional chaos, and all he can think is, oh my gosh, my father, who didn't approve of this part of my life, can see me and can see everything that happens and can see everything that I do with this man and that this man does with me. And I know that he doesn't feel good about it. And how do I cope with that sudden intrusive voyeurism? And so that was the early question, and that remained central for the entire 14 years. That was never a question for me.
Wow.
Sorry, I just had a chew on that. Have any of you seen Dying for Sex, the TV show? So there is a moment where the main character is, she's dying of cancer, and she's trying to have an orgasm, and she sees a shadowy figure of someone right when she's on the edge. It comes up a lot. So the intrusive voyeurism, I'm just whoa, wait a minute. I just had to add that. So if you can't tell from observation, Denne and I are both black women. And we talk a lot in the group chats about desirability, about being seen, about also being invisible. And there's this striking scene in the novel where Everett, who was black, is out with Davis, who was white.
Or vice versa.
Right, sorry. Davis is black, Everett is white. I'm sorry. And, you know, Everett, I think it's Davis not even being seen. Like, you make a mention of that. Like, someone just looks right over him. And even though you don't switch gazes multiple times in now POVs, how did you regard the sort of overlapping of like gaze and desire with regards to this novel?
You know, that was also really important to me from the early stages. I mentioned that when I started this novel, I had not had sex. I had really not dated a lot. I didn't have a lot of experience. I had been in like mostly white suburbs, mostly white schools, and when I would try to date, I would constantly be told by people, like, you're so great. Oh my God, I love you. I'm not attracted to femme people. You're so great. Oh my God, I love you. I'm not attracted to black people. All the time. This was just like a constant refrain. And it didn't feel great, right? And I heard this, by the way, from men of all colors. Like, this was not just coming from white men. And so I just had interest around the time that I started this novel too. One of my very dear friends who's in the audience, who's a close friend from college, was like, girl, you need to stop fucking with these white men. Like, you need to stop fucking with these white men. And I was like, you are probably right. But
Affirmed.
Reader, I did not. Reader, I did not. But I wanted to write, from the beginning, I wanted to write a love story. I wanted to write a love story that felt almost like a fairy tale, that almost felt too good to be believed, too good to be true. And I wanted this black femme queer character to be at the center of it and to be so loved and to be so cherished. And I wanted to write a novel where that was never in question. And I also wanted to write a novel where of the two people in the relationship, that was the person who had the power to ruin it. Like he was so used to this that his disregard is the thing that almost makes it potentially explode. This is not a novel. I had no interest in writing a novel where this character or anyone around this character is like, you're so lucky to have him. And so that played out in a number of ways. When I first started the novel, when I was still at Sarah Lawrence, I always knew that Davis would be a musician. But at the time, I was writing it where Davis had gone to Juilliard, was immensely talented, had not built a career as a musician, was selling soap at the mall, which I had sold soap at the mall when I finished college at Lush, if you know Lush. And just wasn't a musician, and I was interested in maybe like writing it, like maybe there was a way in which Davis found his way back to the cello, because he played the cello at that point. And that was like interesting to me. And also Everett, who's older, who comes from money, who makes plenty of money himself, is fully like the breadwinner in this relationship. And Davis makes no money and does not contribute to that in any way and doesn't have to. But that's like what I was doing. And as I wrote into that, I completely lost interest in the idea of Davis being dependent on Everett financially. And I was like, well, what if Davis is actually really talented and is like maybe a mess in this way, but is like super talented, has a career that's going, has gone to Juilliard, has really capitalized on that career, and is like making a career as like a soloist and is out in the world making his own money and does not in any way need need Everett to pay his bills. That was so much more interesting to me. And once I came upon that realization, I was able to understand Davis so much better, and his like narrative throughout the book, and I was able to characterize their relationship because I was like, oh, Everett feels lucky to have Davis, and Everett's older, and Everett's wiser in certain ways, and Everett has been married before to a cisgender woman because Everett's bisexual, and so Everett is actually looking at Davis and is like, I'm so lucky that I get to be with this person. And as this person is going through their stuff, I want to make sure that he stays with me. And Davis is the one who's just kind of like, oh yeah, you're here. Like, like, yeah.
Butch bisexual alert. I mean, maybe
Yes.
butch for this room, I guess.
Can I just say, sorry, I died. I was so grateful and lucky to get a starred review in Publishers Weekly, but they referred to They referred to Everett as a sturdy bisexual, and nothing has given me more joy than that verbiage.
Listen,
Like,
it's a joy to have your book reviewed for the book that it is.
Yes.
He is a sturdy
He's
bisexual.
a sturdy bisexual.
like, show yourself.
And a sturdy bisexual who I believe can drive stick.
Absolutely. Loves to
Not
drive
a
stick.
metaphor, you sickos. So I was struck by something as I read this book. I would like to break down the femme-butch binary because there are some aspects of you that I think are Midwestern, and you have insights into the way people express their personalities. And one of the things that really struck me in this book was people's relationship to their cars. And it's particularly interesting for a New York City book. Follow me here. And I wanted to ask this question because I think it's something that is probably not going to get asked by other people.
It hasn't yet.
But the car stands in this book for people's own self-perception, for agency, for movement. There's a huge reaction to practical cars versus luxury cars. And I'm wondering if you could talk about how you found that as a metaphor to express, I think particularly Davis's relationship to different people and places and times in his own sense of agency.
Well, I had a lot of fun playing with Davis's sense of agency. And Davis, in this novel, at the beginning of this novel, is like 25. So is not necessarily plugged into all the ways in which he has agency, but also isn't entirely aware of where he does have agency. Like he probably feels like he doesn't have a lot of agency, but he is not aware of the ways in which he does. I am Midwestern, as you said. I'm from Cleveland Heights, Ohio. I'm a girl from Ohio. And, there's not like a serious or strong infrastructure for public transportation where I grew up. And so it was pretty normal, like across even economic and social class, it was pretty normal to get a car when you were 16 in Cleveland, Ohio, if you were a kid who was like involved in athletics or music or the arts, your parents weren't trying to drive you around anymore.
What was your first car, Dan?
My first car was a new 2002 blue Honda Civic EX.
That's so black.
Listen, my dad loved it because it was so safe. It was like a super safe car. It was small. It wasn't great in the snow, though, which was a problem in Cleveland at that point. But anyway, and so this is just a normal thing, like from there. And I think about it a lot because I have lived in New York for so long and for many years did not have a car, recently got a car. I'm probably going to sell that car. It's, whole thing. But I guess the point is, and also in other fiction of mine, and there are short stories I've written where cars play a really important role. I'm really interested in bodies and people in motion, and really like moving from one point to another, and the interiority that they're dealing with when they're by themselves and they're in transit from one location to another. And Davis travels a lot as a classical musician who's kind of a rising star, so he's got a decent amount of time to himself where he's thinking about all of this stuff. And for me, it's just a really fertile area to play with the character's interiority and like more clearly understanding who that character is, how they move in the world, what motivates them. But certainly it was a fun, easy way to play up the butch femme dynamic in this relationship, like easily. This is just a little peek into my own psychology. One of my best friends from high school drove a stick in high school. And when we were in college, we were home for the holidays, and he was like, you need to learn how to drive a stick. Like, you just need to learn how to drive a stick. I was like, I don't think I do. But he insisted that I do, and that I did. And so he took me to a parking lot, and he tried to teach me how to drive it. And the car, what is it? Stalled. Thank you.
Yep.
It stalled. I burst into tears. I said, never again. I'm not doing this. I don't need it. And I don't remember if that's in the book, but it was in the book at some point. It was in a draft of it.
On 10th Avenue, I believe, in traffic. Davis, yeah.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm. Listen. You spend 14 years writing the book, and then you're like, wait, what's it? Like, what made it in, and what? It's like it's very confusing. You think you do so many edits, but it's still like I cannot. Like I have to have it in front of me, open to the page to remember what's in it and what isn't in it.
And y'all thought it was a stupid question.
No, I'm not stupid. When y'all talk about cars, I'm just like, I don't know what y'all are talking about. I'm just like, what is stick shift? I don't even know what that is. I barely know how to pump my own gas. So I was like,
well, because you grew up in New Jersey.
Exactly. So I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Aside from your canine companion, who was your favorite character to write?
Oh, that's a great question. Thank you. The question asker is Kelly, my best friend from high school.
Hi,
from
Kelly.
Cleveland Heights, who in fact is the dog mom to real life Bam Bam.
Bam Bam.
I stole the name. It's such a good name. I love all of the characters. I love them as though they're real people. And I feel like in some ways I experience them as real people. I think the character I had the most fun with, I had a lot of fun with the women in the novel, actually. So Olivia, Davis's sister, who's like kind of a bitch, but like really brilliant. Yeah, but she's also like loving and tender. Like I had so much fun with her. I had fun with Adina, Davis's mother, who is a character who ultimately is not as present on the page in the final version of the novel as she was in earlier versions, but I had a lot of fun writing her and the Reverend's love story and her love story for her children, which is still there in like some very tight like sections. And then Charlotte is Everett's mother. And Charlotte also doesn't take up a ton of space on the page, but I had a ton of fun writing her and her love story with her brother, which is in there. So I would say the women were the most fun to write. So maybe they were my favorites to write.
You sort of got at this a little, but so far I've been really struck by how embodied the writing is. Like it feels very physical. I feel really aware of like how characters are in their body and in the space that they're inhabiting and in relationship to each other. And it's really visceral and powerful. And I was just wondering like what your process of writing sensuousness on the page is like.
Oh my gosh, thank you for that question. Thank you, Professor Maura Finkelstein. So I was really interested in writing the body, and the truth is that when I started, I was super scared of it because, again, I had little to no experience, and even as a reader, I felt like I was not as well read as many of my peers when I started my MFA program, and so the first thing is that I just read. I went to professors, and they were reading pages of what I was writing, and I was like, who can I read, who can help me with this? And so they recommended Toni Morrison, they recommended James Salter, the novel Light Years in particular, which has incredible embodied writing and sex scenes and intimacy. And there was actually a Jhumpa Lahiri story that was very important to me at the time that also had some great embodied writing, which I don't feel like is really her thing, but there's a couple stories where that happens, and Taiye Selasi, who wrote the novel Ghana Must Go, has some incredible stuff in there as well. And so I just tried to study people who were really phenomenal. When Garth Greenwell's work came out, I was reading all of his work. And it was just reading work. But I think for me, it was one, just going for it and trying to just setting aside the nervousness of writing bad sex scenes and like just being like, I have to do this. Like I can't write a novel that deals with sex in this way and not be comfortable writing sex scenes. So I just have to work through it. And I had a professor in grad school, Mary Morris, whose novel The Red House is coming out next month. And Mary, we had a one-on-one session and she was like, you need to do this. And so she literally was like, do not come back here in 2 weeks for your next one-on-one if you have not written a sex scene. Like, just see yourself out. And I had to do it. And that scene is actually still in the novel. It's revised, but it's in the novel. And so someone just sort of ripped the Band-Aid off, right? Someone was kind enough to rip the Band-Aid off for me. But I would say the other thing is that once you begin to really think about the fact that the sex on the page, I feel like in literary fiction is not about the sex, actually. You begin to think about the fact that it's communicating so much more. It's doing so much more. As mentioned, I used to be a figure skater. I'm obsessed with Michelle Kwan. Her choreographer for most of her career was this Canadian woman named Laurie Nickel. And they used to say that the music told them what the choreography needed to be for the program. And I kind of think about writing sex and writing intimacy in the same way. Once you begin to understand what the characters need, what the story needs, it tells you what to put on the page, what to leave off of the page, what to have the characters doing, what to let be interior and what to let the reader into, and what to try and allude to without letting the reader into it. It's very intricate, but you have to know kind of what you're after. And the real question is how to figure out what you're after. And that's the thing that takes, at least for me, it took a long time, is what was I really after in these scenes? What did I want to communicate? What did I want the reader to know? Where did I want there to be gaps between what the reader knew versus what some characters knew about other things? Because like you're in a certain character's point of view, but the character's interacting with another character. What can I communicate that other character knows without being in their point of view at that moment? But also I can be in their point of view at that moment at a different time, which is something I really love to do, which I first learned about in Atonement by Ian McEwan, both in the film and the novel. So it does get intricate, but the point is, once you begin to figure out what you want, and what you want to communicate, you can begin to kind of just figure out how to lay the bricks to build the house.
I have a question about your closeness to the story. You talked about the beginning, first starting to write it, and drawing on your own life, and so I'm curious how that changed from over the 14 years, and how you kind of have contended with the closeness of your own life experiences with the ones that your characters have experienced. How do those lines blur? Is that complicated? In what ways is that complicated? And how do you compartmentalize that or not? How do you live through that?
These fucking questions. God damn.
Rosie. Thank you for that question. I have a theory, and I came back to Sarah Lawrence my second year when I had started this, and I truly was telling everyone, it's a short story, it's a long short story, but it's a short story. But I began to figure out one of my theories about writing, which is that when it comes to fiction writers, in this way, I feel like there's sort of two writers. There's writers who start close to their personal experience and ultimately end up writing further away from it, which is what I did. And then there's writers who start further away from their experience and in the process of writing end up coming closer to their own experience. And I think that, we all sort of walk that line. It was really difficult for the first few years, and I wrote very, very slowly for the first few years because I didn't have a lot of distance. It just was. I remember I met with a literary agent at Sarah Lawrence who read some pages and liked it and was like, yeah, when you finish it, send it to me. And I was sort of like, I don't know. I was like, it might take me 5 years to write it. Like, do you still want me to send it to you then? And she was like, yeah, but yeah, exactly. That was the joke. So it just was difficult, and I would have to take time and sort of give myself grace because I knew I was writing something that was close to my experience. And as I got deeper into the novel and as I lived my life and built my life, I knew, and also as the story became clearer to me, I had to write away from it. One of the early lessons I learned at a workshop called Vona, where I studied with Evelina Galong, whose comments to me actually kind of kickstarted this novel, to be frank. She said, she's like, you cannot write in a way where you're trying to protect anyone, whether it's you, whether it's real people who have inspired this, whether it's your characters. is not about protecting them. You have to make the choices that are that best serve the story. And that sort of necessarily pulled me away from my own experience, because my own full experience in my mind would probably not make a very interesting novel. So I had to kind of get outside of it. And it took all this time to create that fictive distance. But I will say that there are some key scenes towards the end of the book that I knew needed to be in the book probably as early as 2013. And I put off writing them for years and years and years and years. And then finally, like in 2022, my agent and I were like, this is the year. And I have to shout out my agent, Robert, because he is the most extraordinary cheerleader, and just steadily was like supporting me and showing up and checking in and keeping me on the ball when there were so many moments where I could have just turned aside. But so we were like, this is the year. And so I was so close to finishing it. I rented a little cottage in New Jersey for a weekend and I was like, I'm going to finish. I didn't quite finish. I came very close, but I wrote those scenes. And the process was I always write playing music, and I had found a piece of music that was just generating images and language. And that's what I have to find, a piece of music that does that. And when it does, I put it on repeat, and it's just repeating for as long as it's working for me. And sometimes that's months, and sometimes that's like 2 days, but I just do it. And so I'd found this piece of music, and I was writing these scenes, and I would like write the scene, and I would get up and I would burst into tears, and I would fall face down into the bed and just like cry my eyes out, because I was therapizing myself and doing this. And then I would get up and get back to the desk and be like, okay, like you need to keep going. And that's how these 2 or 3 scenes in particular came into existence. So it was difficult to manage. I do not know that I will write another novel that's as close to my experience as this in certain ways is. But it's also important to note that like the heart of the characters, the heart of what's in this novel is not as close to my experience. I really did use like just details, street names and locations and the names of institutions and job titles. And I stole those from my life and the lives of people around me. But stealing those gave me the freedom to be as creative as I needed to be in terms of the heart of the story. But also, I don't know that I'll write another novel that's as close to my experience as this one. We'll see. But I think maybe I'm past that.
I think it's the perfect time for us to pause and say, in true food for thought form, finish your next novel, Den.